If you have a brain in your head, you have a mental health. It's as simple as that. And it's how you think, act, and feel on a day-to-day basis. It's how you interact with the world. It's how you cope with change, challenge, and adversity, how you maintain meaningful relationships. Everyone has a mental health. And the better we look after and manage our mental health, the better version of ourselves will be, the better we'll be able to cope.
Welcome to M26 Fit, the podcast that powers your spirit, mind, and body. I'm the host, Magnus Olsen, and on this exclusive episode, we're collaborating with the Mastering Podcast, and I'm joined by co-host, Masters athlete and entrepreneur Don Sanka, and NDIS expert Ryan Schillerpay. Today's special guest is a man who knows what it means to battle both on and off the field. From playing over 150 NRL games at the highest level to facing one of life's toughest opponents, his own mental health. Today, he's the founder of the mental health movement, leading a national charge to break down stigma, change conversations, and create real support where it matters most. I don't know about you boys, but I'm looking forward to talking about strength, vulnerability, and what it truly means to lead from the front. Welcome to the podcast, Dan.
Thank you, gentlemen. I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity. And any chance to, I guess, have a real deep, meaningful conversation around a topic like this. I'm looking forward to it.
And this is a collaboration between M26 Fit and Mastering. We thought it'd be a really good opportunity for us to get together on this.
100%. And Dan, if I could start off, like you went from playing in front of tens and thousands of fans and then to confronting your own mental health struggles behind closed doors. Do you mind just trying to describe to our listeners a little bit of some of the pressures that are faced by professional sports people today?
Yeah, look, I can only obviously speak personally of myself, but look, I didn't have the best of upbringing, so around domestic violence and stuff like that. And footy was kind of a place that gave me identity, purpose, and belonging. So it was kind of all your eggs were in that basket. Lucky enough to obviously make the NRL and played an extended period of time in there, but it is around performance. It is around trying to be the best you can be every single day so that you can perform on the field for that 80 minutes. You're obviously, it's videoed, and every single thing that you do, either whether it's well or not well, is obviously scrutinized, reviewed, and then that's done in front of the whole team, and you get your honest feedback, and then you've got to either build yourself back up or you got to try and maintain that performance, and then again it's your body. Like I wasn't the biggest front rower, and I tried to go as hard as I could for as long as I could, but your body starts to break down over time. So then it's starting to affect your mental health, the way you think about things. But then look, just like in the workplace, there's 80 minutes on the field, there's training, but players and professional athletes have got lives away from professional sport, and they've got relationships, they've got finances, they've got grief and loss, they've got their upbringing, they've got all these other things that come with it. So you bring your whole self to work, you bring your whole self onto the field or the pitch or whatever sport that you're playing. So being able to obviously manage all the performance, the body, all that type of stuff, but also have the things off the field in order and in check so that it's not impacting that time in which you are performing. And the other thing is you don't want to let your teammate down, specifically talking about rugby league. You don't want to let yourself down. But look, for me, I was managing undiagnosed mental illness at the time. So, look, some days I was like, how am I getting out of bed, let alone stepping onto a rugby league field in front of 45,000 people and performing? So it's there is a lot of pressure. And as you'll see, some people manage pressure really well. I think experience as well helps you manage that pressure. Having good support networks around you, whether that's family, friends, loved ones, or it's your coaching staff, your fellow players. And I was lucky enough to be coached by one of the best in Wayne Bennett for that period of time. So everyone obviously handles pressure, deals with pressure differently. But I think the other thing, I was only young then. So like I'm not a 40-year-old brain now, and all that experience, putting it back when you're 19, 20, you're doing the best with what you've got at that point in time.
With that, pressure on the field, did that correlate over into the locker room? Like you said, you had your teammates. When you went into that locker room, did that mask that facade kind of come off a little bit? And did you talk to the boys about it? Or was it very much like it stays on the whole time because you obviously want to keep playing, you want to keep showing everyone that high level
don't want to show weakness.
No weakness. So did you find even in the locker room that was still very much
Yeah, definitely. I think for me, one of my coping strategies was like back then was wearing the mask, but my mask was the loose guy, the funny guy, loose on the piss, the taking the piss out of everyone, doing practical jokes, all that type of stuff. And that was kind of my mask because, yeah, all that stuff happened from my upbringing and not dealing with it, sweeping under the carpet, pretending like it wasn't there. It did affect me. And it used to be a bit of a running joke. Like my nickname was Bubsy when I played football. It still is now, but it was Bubsy because of the big cheeks.
Tell us the story about that.
The baby face and the big cheeks. I don't have the baby face so much anymore, but I've still got the big cheeks. But that was my nickname. And it used to be a running joke. Where was Bubsy on the roller coaster? Like, was Bubsy at the top? Go near him. He's good. He's awesome. Good time. He's ripping in. He'll train hard, play hard, perform well. Or was he at the bottom? Stay away from him. Like, I couldn't even hold a conversation with someone. And that was just, look, that's just how it was. But for me, I guess as a young bloke, before you sort of establish yourself as a regular first grader and you've earned the respect of the senior players and all those different things, yeah, you're not going in there. I'm not talking about what happened in my upbringing or shit that was worrying me or what I was thinking and my family and all this type of stuff. I wasn't saying any of that because I thought it was a sign of weakness. I thought, shit, would these people want to play with me? Like, I'm supposed to be the tough front rower, taking this team forward and having the tough carries and things like that. Why would they want to play with someone that hasn't got their shit together mentally? And like, are you going to get re-signed? Are you going to get a contract? So all those things, as you're saying, the stigma, I did put on the mask, and I'm not going to lie, and convinced myself I was good, and convinced everyone else around me that I was all good.
You mentioned
I think people knew something.
You mentioned that you played under Wayne Bennett. Was Phil Jauncey involved back then?
Yep. Phil was there. Yeah, definitely.
So were you a Mozzie?
No, yeah, I was a Mozzie. No, I was a thinker and a feeler. Sorry.
Okay.
Wendell Saylor was a Mozzie.
Yeah, can we get a bit of, because we had Phil Jauncey on for one of our episodes, but
he's an amazing human being.
He did, yeah. There's a lot that we learned, but one thing I did not learn is what any of those things meant.
I've actually.
Yeah, I got no idea either. I'm so glad you.
I sometimes look back through some of because I've kept a lot of the paperwork that we got and things like that. Like, it was in a print things out world. It wasn't a digital world so much back then, but. I guess the premise for that was that you can't taint everyone with the same brush. Yeah. And it was some people prepare for a game this way, some people prepare that way, others prepare that way. So if someone's like upbeat, dancing, carrying on, joking around and they perform, like, you've got to like let them do that. Or you've got someone that goes there and puts headphones on and is in the corner and it's like, yeah, like doing that. Or you got someone else that's just there cruising. Some people falling asleep. Like, everyone's different. So it was kind of doing that. And we shared those results with each other. So we knew.
What is a Mozzie though? Is that someone
that's upbeat, bouncing around, just always constantly on and
hovering around like a Mozzie?
Yeah, and
that's how I.
Where the thinker might be someone that's playing the game out in their head and visualization and things like that, and thinking about outcomes, and then the feeler is like really, I guess getting into the different parts of it. So it's just understanding what you were.
Does it change with time? Just out of curiosity.
No,
I only did it once. And
profiling is really synonymous in business environments, not so much. I haven't
psychometric
testing and all of that, right? So does that help in the sporting environment in the same way? It did help you to sort of understand your personality?
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I suppose
100%.
With your teammates as well, like if you can understand, like sometimes, he's doing his thing right now, I'm going to just leave him alone, give him his space. You can still do your own thing, but it's like that understanding of how everyone operates in the team, how they're thinking. So I suppose that would be
it is, and everyone's
helpful.
Different. Like, I've played, for me, I had to do every single rep, every single thing, lift as heavy as I could, train as hard as I could, do extras on days off, everything to a T to make sure that I was right on the field for the 80 minutes, where others, they wouldn't be lifting heavy or whatever, and they get out on the field on that 80 minutes and absolutely kill it. And you're like, how the fuck do they do that? Where that's and you learn everyone's different, and you got to not so focus on what everyone else is doing. Understand how you tick, what works for you, and try and do everything you can to be the best you can be. But
Dan, understanding you, I just want to step back a few more. Sort of get a view of the young Dan. You said you had a lot of the upbringing wasn't perfect. How did you get into football? What drove you to that? Was that a distraction? Was that you became a professional football player?
Yeah, I think.
What was the journey like?
Like my father, obviously pushed me and got me into footy pretty heavily as a young kid. I think I started when I was 6. And then, like as any young kid, you just fall in love with the game. I used to be a Newcastle Knights fan. Paul Harrigan, the Chief, was my absolute hero. I used to get the flat top haircut like him, and it was just I remember getting his signature when I was 11 years old at Wynn Stadium. So it was you fall in love with the game. But for me, I guess growing up in that environment, domestic violence and stuff like that, I didn't really have an identity, purpose, or that sense of belonging. So for me, it was sort of rugby league gave me that, where it channeled a lot of that stuff that I'd swept under the carpet and pretended like it wasn't there. It channeled it into something. And I started to be around positive people, positive environments. And I really, I guess, it resonated with me and it gave me structure. I call it put me on the straight and narrow, for example, and I was able to channel a lot of that anger, frustration, all that misunderstanding that I just didn't know anything about. I was able to channel it into something through training, through physical, whatever you want to call it, physical activity, physical combat, and it served me well. And that's sort of how I got into footy. And you sort of go through the junior reps, Harold Matthews, SG Ball, 16s, 17s, 18s, Jersey Flag, and we had some really good players in our Jersey Flag side. We won the comp in 2005.
What's the Jersey Flag side?
So I don't know what the equivalent here is in Queensland. It was like under 20s.
Oh, okay.
So we had, I think it was 11 or 12 people out of our under 20 side go on to play in the NRL.
Right.
So like Josh and Brett Morris, Jason Nightingale, players like that. So we sort of all come through the ranks together, and you're like, shit, we can maybe make something of this. And then it was like, some got up to the top squad before others. A few of us, we got left behind, and it took us a little bit longer. But that was I'm pretty fond of those memories of, like, I used to go to school. I'd work at Woolworths, stacking the fruit and veg from 5 till 11, 5 till 10, and then school started at 11:55. And then I'd go to school, then you go to training. And that was...
What sort of school did you go to that starts at 11?
Yeah, it was Evan Rice College in Wollongong. It was a Christian Brothers school, but we started at 11:55 was homeroom, and you'd finished at 4:55.
That's wicked.
Yeah, it was good.
Man, that's
It's my sort of school.
It was pretty
it probably plays to the strength, like a lot of kids. Like, that's perfect. Why don't we do that more often? I don't know.
But how's mum and dad in today's society going to drop their kids at school at 11 o'clock?
Yeah,
no, sorry. I have to rephrase that. 7 to 10 is normal hours. 11 and 12, was 11:55 to 4:55. So you can get your own way there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You should be getting your own way there.
What do you think, like, let's remove, NRL from the equation.
Yeah.
How do you think you would have ended up without that coping strategy, without that support network, without those teams, without that community beside you supporting you? Obviously, you said previously there was like a few issues or problems. How do you think you would have coped without that?
Really good question. I haven't really been asked that question ever. I don't know. I could have gone down plenty of different routes, got myself into trouble, done probably not smart things, probably I think I'd probably be substance using pretty heavily, and I'd be in a pretty dark spot and probably just trying to get through every day, if I'm being brutally honest.
I think it just goes to show, like, the importance of community. And, you mentioned Wayne Bennett before, and like a bunch of these people around you actually, noticing your traits and being able to accommodate accordingly and actually assist you as well in finding alternative routes and where to direct that energy as well.
It also shows the importance of investment in grassroots sports. It gives a lot of kids opportunity, right? Like let's see, Tobago, it was one of the ones at global level. He's come out and said if he won the 200 meters, beat Noah Lyles, and he said if his mom didn't put him into athletics, he'll probably be in jail, which is I guess very similar story for a lot of people. Shows the importance of grassroots sports. I
think as well, like, one thing for me, it was obviously rugby league, but I didn't meet my wife. It was 2009, but that 2010, and we'll probably get into it, when I went through the depths of my struggle, having a partner that is there through thick and thin, I think that for me as well and a shout out to Nadine. But that, rugby league and her, I'd
Sounds like purpose.
Yeah, I'd be off the.
I
think I'd be off the rails.
I couldn't agree more. I went through a pretty dark place as well, and my partner AJ was instrumental in getting you through that. And the situation that I found myself in was self-inflicted, but it had an effect on us and our relationship, and in particular our finances. And at that particular time, I know for a fact that if she would have started hating on me, which happens unfortunately in a lot of relationships, it's like, well, hey, you made your bed, dickhead, like you sleep in it. That probably would have been enough to tip me over the edge. And it's something we may touch on later. Then I've become quite passionate about on the difference that support network. And I think that just so important, whether it be your intimate partner, like at the end of the day, they are such a huge influence in your life. And to have that level of support coming from that number one person is, you can't.
Well, it goes back to what you were saying about the mask, and I appreciate you sharing that. But if you've got the mask on all day and then you get home into your safe haven and you've got to continue wearing the mask.
I think it's that unshakable faith in someone that you can come home and you can feel that no matter what you say, no matter what comes out of your mouth, this person is still going to love you. They're very aware of those flaws or all those errors you made.
There's no judgment.
No,
yeah, correct. That's the difference.
None of that matters if you don't have self-awareness, right? Like for you, when do you realize? You said before, you touched on it. You said you had an undiagnosed mental illness. At what point did you realize that and take some positive action towards it, or did someone else?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's not like, and that's why I did start the mental health movement initially, was obviously sharing the power of story because it connects with people. It cuts through the bullshit. It's been passed on through generations, religions, cultures, like the story, because we relate to it, the hero's journey, all these different things. But it was also, I never knew the stuff that I'd learned through my journey of becoming mentally well, living with a mental illness. And I'd never learned any of that. I didn't get taught it at school.
Well, when did you identify it? When did you?
And I'll tell you. And that was sort of why I was like, well, people need to know this shit. Like whether you're managing a mental illness or just yourself. So, and the other thing is, like, without going into stats and stuff, but currently in Australia, 54% of people that go through a mental health struggle or experience mental illness.
And stats matter.
Or a mental health disorder.
Sometimes it does,
they do not seek support. They suffer in silence. So
it's
54% approximately.
So half the people.
Well, but suicide is the leading cause of death of Australians under the age of 44.
Yeah, 15 to 44. So in all the awareness and everything that we've done in society as a community, we've still got more than half the population suffering in silence. So why is that? Well, there's barriers, and there's so many different types of barriers. So part of what needs to happen is identifying, navigating and overcoming these barriers. But I think a lot of people think that and a lot of pressure gets put on the individual going through the struggle. But if you've ever been in the depths of a struggle, it's hard enough just to get up and have a shower, have something to eat and show up, let alone navigating the support system and being vulnerable and articulating how you're thinking and feeling. You don't even understand it yourself. How are you going to explain it to someone else? And then you add the stigma, the stereotype, the judgment, the lack of awareness and all those things to it. A lot of us, we isolate, we disconnect, we suffer in silence. But for me, it's not something that happens overnight. I think you don't just ask, are you okay? One time, yep, I'm all good. Yep, sweet, jog on. That's awesome. It takes time. You may be ready to be a support, but that person may not be ready to seek support. And that was me. I didn't want support. I didn't even realize I was struggling. I had the blinkers on, and I was just focused.
This is still in your footy career?
Yeah. Yep. So it was 2010. Started playing. 07 debuted. 2010, Wayne had come in 09. We were the minor premiers. We got knocked out in straight sets. I played terrible in the game at Suncorp Stadium, actually, where we got knocked out by the Broncos.
Did that have an impact on?
No. And then had the biggest preseason ever that year. Started every game. I think we'd won 11 straight. Favourites to win the premiership, which we did that year. I think it was round 20. I turned in a warm-up drill, snapped my Achilles tendon, and I was out for the next 12 months, missed the grand final. But for me, it was the thing that had kept me on the straight and narrow was taken away for a 12-month period. And it was all that stuff from my past and my upbringing that I'd swept under the carpet and pretended like it wasn't there. It'd come back and hit me like an absolute ton of bricks. And I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to cope with it. I didn't know how to manage it, and I wasn't doing that because I thought that was a sign of weakness. So for me, I pushed the closest people to me away. I treated them very poorly. I isolated myself. I got introduced to painkillers, obviously getting surgery for the first time, and to take away the physical pain. I began to take away the emotional pain, not following the doctor's orders, doctor shopping, and eating painkillers to numb pain, to escape reality. And then it was illicit drugs, then it was alcohol. It was the combination of all isolation, anger. And I got to the point where, like, I didn't want to be here anymore. But I think the way I was, people were like scared to check in on me, like because of how aggressive and angry and stuff that I was. So I was kind of putting myself in a bit of a hole, more of a hole.
I want to find out, during that time, and that was clearly a very low point for you, but you were still contracted as a professional footy player. What level of support were you receiving from your teammates and from the club while you were going through that?
Yeah, the Dragons were great. Scotty Stewart was our welfare and education officer. Wayne was great. Some of the senior players.
So they just check in on you?
Yeah, or? Dean Young was fantastic. But the thing was, if you're not honest with the people around you about the depths of your struggle and what you're actually doing, like I was still fronting up the training. Like you're in rehab. Like,
so your mask was on?
Yeah. But I was on crutches there. It was in a bad place, but no one really knew because I wasn't. It's not like coming in with a sign on saying I'm self-medicating to the point where I don't want to be here anymore. So no, the mask was on. So it wasn't until I guess a combination of things happened that got me to the point where I knew, like, I had to make some change. The first part was my mum come over. I was. Yeah, pretty bad place, self-medicating at my house. And she come over one day and just sat down with me. She was obviously worried, very worried. And she said to me something, it really rattled me, and I'll never forget how it made me feel. She said, "You're becoming your father." And the person I wanted to break the cycle and not be like I was starting to become. And it planted a seed, but I still didn't go and seek support. It would have been, I reckon, a couple of weeks, maybe a month later. We had the Black Dog Institute come into training. They were a partner with the NRL at the time. They're a leader in the research, treatment and diagnosis of mental illness, in particular mood disorders and depression. Great in research. They're a fantastic organisation. They come in and did sort of an awareness session around mental illness, and I didn't really know anything about any of this. The gentleman that was there doing the session, it was like he was talking directly to me. I remember I was sitting at the front, I had my hood on, and it was like everything was just hitting home. I'm like, holy fuck, like, and it rattled me. And I remember one of the boys come up to me and said, "Fuck, did that hit home for you?" And I went, "Yeah." And then I went home after that. We got given a resource, and you could go there was like an assessment tool link on it. So I went home and did it, and it come back with red flags that you need to seek clinical professional support. I still didn't tell anyone about that.
So it was like a questionnaire or something?
Yeah, like a self-assessment tool or something. Yeah. I still didn't tell anyone else about it. And then it was a conversation I then had with Wayne that I guess, yeah, he checked in on me. And I think the thing about it was we asked, "Are you okay?" And that was what he asked. He could see I was off. I wasn't my usual self. I wasn't happy-go-lucky Bubsy. And he pulled me aside and he just checked in. He goes, "How you traveling?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm all good." He said, "No, you're not." And I just sort of went.
Was it the tone of your voice, or like what do you think gave it away to him?
No, well, he's been watching me, and he knew I wasn't right or whatever it was, but he said, "No, you're not." And then he shared a few things about his personal life, and it was sort of, for me, I broke down and started to share some stuff with him that I hadn't shared with anyone about my upbringing and things that were sort of rattling me. And there was no secret answer or anything like that, or it was honestly, it was a weight of the world lifted off my shoulders. It was the first time I'd actually articulated what was going on up here. And Wayne didn't fix or solve anything. He just said, "We're going to get you the support that you need." And that was when I obviously spoke to my missus, and I had to honestly tell her where I was at with the self-medication, the suicidal thoughts, the place that I was at. And then I did tell him about the assessment at the Black Dog Institute, and that's where they said, "Well, we're going to help you every step of the way to get you support you need." And that was when I booked in with the Black Dog Institute. I spent about 6 or 7 hours up there at their.
When did you meet Nadine?
To April 2009, and this would have been maybe August, September 2010. And then went through a whole range of different assessments, tests, and stuff like that with a clinical psych and a psychiatrist. family history, I found out my father was diagnosed manic depressive, in the 80s or 90s. So we had a family history, my personality, the substance use, a whole range of different things. And at the end of it, I was given a formal diagnosis in 2010 with type 2 bipolar disorder.
Just explain that to our listeners, what that means.
Yeah, so there's obviously type 1 and type 2. Type 1 where individuals can have what they call manic episodes with depressive states. They can also sometimes experience psychosis. Type 2 is a little bit different where they experience more what they call hypomania with depressive states, but they can be a little bit more frequent. But it is very different for every individual. But
how did you feel in getting that diagnosis, like having it almost like explained to you what was going on, like to have someone go, hey, this is why this is happening? How was that?
Honestly, I smile when I say it, and it's not to any disrespect of people that are living and struggling and suffering with it, because it is very, very challenging. But for me, it was like a weight of the world lifted off my shoulders. It was like the books were going back on the shelf in chronological order. It was like why I thought, why I felt, why I behaved, all these different things started to make a bit of sense.
Yeah.
But for me, it drew a line in the sand. It was like, okay, no different now. I just ruptured my Achilles. I had to rehab it. I had to do these things. It was like, all right, what do I need to do? What do I got to do to get to work to be able to learn to better manage this mental illness rather than suffer in silence with it? And that has not changed from the day that I was diagnosed.
So what does that rehabilitation, what did that look like? What was the first thing you needed to do?
It was I had to find a clinical support. First and foremost, with a formal diagnosis, see a psychiatrist to get medication and get the medication right, a mood stabilizer, which I was on for an extended period of time, probably 5 or 6 years. So getting that medication right was probably a really key part.
How was that process like? Because obviously being in your position coming from the NRL, you're probably quite fortunate to be able to have access.
Have the supports that you need.
To be able to access those things. Now, if we take like a regular Australian, to get a diagnosis, to get into a psychiatrist, you're waiting 6.
Actually, I want to ask you, Ryan, like you're in that space.
Yeah.
This is what you do, your business. Is that how easy or how hard is it to get a diagnosis?
Well, access is one of those big barriers.
Yeah. Huge barrier. 1 in 5 Australians can't even afford to get a proper diagnosis.
Yeah.
So
how much does it
even
cost
with
to get
the
a diagnosis?
rebates,
how big's a piece of string depends on your.
Let me just jump in here. In my case, and I didn't take it any further than this, but I went and saw my GP and basically got a prescription to get some pills. Do you know what I mean? Like it was as simple. There was no further diagnosis,
right? Like that's the whole point.
Yeah,
and that's treating the symptom. And those for me that never ever worked. And what I needed to do was I started taking those, but then I was still on the piss.
But the biggest thing for me from what Dan said is that diagnosis practically, like, that was a life-changing event.
That was an aha moment.
Right?
Yeah.
So
And I definitely hear what you're saying. Like, it is to see a psychiatrist. The basics. People just think they're shrinks. Where there's levels of clinical support from a GP to a mental health GP.
Yep.
To a counsellor, to a psychologist, to a clinical psychologist, to a psychiatrist.
Correct.
To a social worker, clinical social worker, clinical mental health nurse. There's so many different levels of support, and so, depending on where that person's at, will depend on the type of clinical support they need.
Yeah, but Black Dog, for example, I know that they're also big in the trade world. You went and saw those guys. Off the back of that, if anybody else that's out there, can anybody just go and see those, or were you recommended?
They came into the
They
NRL.
were partnered with the NRL at the time, and it was nearly 15 years ago. And I don't think the awareness and stuff was out there, so there may not have been as many people reaching out. Yeah. But a general population or public can go and get support through the Black Dog Institute.
Yes.
I'm not exactly sure. We don't use them as a support network with mental health movement, but I'm not sure what the wait times. But they've got a mood disorder clinic and they've got a depression clinic, and then they obviously do all their fundraising and their research stuff. But you can go and see them and be diagnosed and get treatment.
And so, from what Ryan's saying, if I wanted to go and see an actual psychologist or a psychiatrist, that's where the barrier is. So my GP,
you need a psychiatrist, and that's cost,
access,
time, and access.
Like sometimes it's 9 months to see a psychiatrist in some areas.
Okay,
how much water goes under the bridge in 9 months?
Yeah. Which is is that where the Band-Aid comes in on here's some antidepressant pills and
antidepressants are so different from like antipsychotics. You've got like your high-end antipsychotics for your people that are quite dangerous to either the community or to themselves.
But they can only be prescribed by a psychiatrist.
Yeah, you're a very, very high level psychiatrist that's going to diagnose you.
So to get that proper diagnosis, to say that you have in your case, type 2 bipolar, and then be able to manage that and give you a clinical.
Yeah, plan. For my process, it was it was finding obviously a good GP, because that was the session I remember I went and did through the EAP at the Dragons. I forget, it was David and I won't even say the organisation. And I remember doing that session, and there was sort of incense and a water fountain and all this, and I'm thinking, fuck, what am I doing here? And I remember doing this session with this gentleman.
Hey, we always have water fountains. Hey, I don't know what it is.
Calming. And then I didn't connect with him, and I remember going home, and my miss and my mum were really my mum was living with us at the time, and they were really keen to hear how it went. And I said, no, I'm all good. I'm good now. I got the diagnosis. I'm almost back at footy. And I was almost going to taint every support with the same brush from one bad experience. And my mum said something to me I'll never forget. She said, go and get a second opinion. Just because you had one bad experience with one clinical support, that doesn't mean they're all like that. So that was where I did go through my own GP. I found a clinical psych. I won't say her name, but I've been seeing her since 2010.
To this day.
To this day.
Yeah, well,
obviously, early doors, it was a couple of times a week, then it was weekly. But I still see once a month, and I'll call it a checkup from the neck up.
And that's a clinical psych, you said.
Clinical psychologist.
Psychologist, not psychiatrist.
I did have to see a psychiatrist, so went to the GP, went to her, did obviously a couple of sessions. She got the notes from the Black Dog Institute, and then it was building rapport and understanding where I was at from like the bottom and building it up. And then it was, okay, we need to see the psychiatrist. And then I went to South Coast Private, seeing the psychiatrist. And I remember sitting there, and I had to tell him, he asked me all the substances that I was taking at the time, and he like nearly fell off his chair. And I just remember that. And from there, I was prescribed a mood stabilizer and an antipsychotic, Seroquel. Some heavy duty stuff. But it did obviously help me stabilize my moods. It gave me a chance to learn and understand how to build mental fitness, what works, what doesn't work, triggers, build support networks, all this different, get sleep and all this different type of stuff to get back to being the best version of myself. But I had to get back to like playing professional sport. Then I was obviously able to over time went off through my psychiatrist, the antipsychotics.
So you're able to. So you're not currently on that medication.
Not Seroquel, no, and no mood stabilizer. So I've been medication free for I'd say 5 years. But I don't it's not really something I talk publicly about because I do a lot of stuff to make sure that I'm okay. And if I'm not, I'm under no false illusion that if I have to go back on medication, I have no issue with that. But it's kind of like the scales. I've got to put a lot of things, and I'm sure I'll unpack of what helps me manage my mental illness. Where if you just because and I always leave the medication for the clinical professionals to talk about. But if you're taking medication, it's working, you're feeling good, and you're thinking good, and everything's going okay, don't stop your medication.
Let's just talk about those preventative things because in my instance, I was drinking way too much. So my first thing I had to do, and it was my wife that encouraged me you got to get off the piss. And then I just poured myself into physical activity or physical exercise and getting the endorphin rush from that. And also sleep was a big thing. And then nutrition was the next thing, like some of the food that I was eating and the environment that I was in also wasn't healthy. So getting those basics right. But what worked for you?
They're all good points. And I think, look, there's kind of two parts in which we're having this conversation. There's footy and then there's post-footy because it's like, it's not that it's heaps different, but I'm kind of a different person. Like I don't really identify with that person back then anymore. So if that makes sense.
So you had that injury and then you were rehabilitating that when you went through this whole episode.
Yep.
When did you transition from full-time footy player post?
And how did you work out what that transition was?
Yeah, it wasn't by choice. So I've had 12 surgeries now, but I had a creating knee injury in 2015 in the Auckland.
So you recovered from the Achilles and went back to play?
Yep.
Prepared for another 5 years.
So 2010 was the Achilles and I retired in 2015. So, another 5 years. A lot of surgeries. My body, lot of injuries. I was lucky to get the time out that I did. Very grateful for that. But yeah, 2015 was the career-ending knee injury, and it was I studied, so that was another thing. I studied throughout once I got that diagnosis. I remember
Wayne's a big fan of that.
And I had a convo with him. He said, "Look, you love talking." He goes, "You got a good story." He said, "But you got to go and get educated, and it'll help your footy." And when Wayne says something, you go and do it. So that's what I did. I went and studied. And got the qualifications to put with the lived experience.
What did you study?
A whole heap of different things at TAFE. Diplomas in mental health, counselling. What was it? Community services, drug and alcohol. So AOD, and then social work. Yeah, I think it was about 8 years worth of study.
Whole thing.
It probably would have taken someone else 3 or 4 years to do it, but us front rowers aren't the sharpest tools in the shed. But
I can write.
Yeah, but that education and those qualifications that I got, probably other than going to seek support and get a diagnosis, having my kids meet my wife, it's probably one of the best things that I ever did was get educated and qualified. Because my career was cut short with a career-ending knee injury. I still had 2 and a bit years to run on my contract, and I was going to go overseas and play. So I was retired at 28, and for me it was like, shit, that thing that had kept me on the straight and narrow was taken away in 2010. It was now taken away for good, not just 12 months to rehab an injury. It was finished, medically retired. So for me, it was like, what am I going to do? And it was something that I remember I wrote it in the notes in my phone it was either in 2014 or 15. I want to help as many people as I can in the mental health space. That was what I wrote. And I didn't know what it meant, what I was going to do or anything like that. And that was where the mental health movement come from. I wanted to use movement and exercise and creating change and not being still, but also creating a movement of change. And that was where the name come from. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I finished footy, and then I did work back in footy because I had to, because I still had 2 years on my contract. So, but I was building sort of MHM in the background, and it was, I just said yes to everything. Whether it was a school, a community, whether it was going out to the middle of whoop whoop or sharing and I was just sharing my story, and it connected with people. I had no idea what I was doing, and yeah, that was when I knew that there was something in this.
Well, I don't think we can build a resilient nation if we treat mental health or mental illness like a personal flaw. It has to be treated as a public issue, and it is. And I think that's the only way that we're actually going to achieve anything together. And I think, once you realize that, as obviously you had that aha moment, like this is actually one of the biggest.
But how do you remove the stigma around it to create a public movement? Like
yeah.
How many, I think last time we spoke, you've trained something like 7,000 people face to face. And that was a long time ago.
500,000. Yeah.
That was a very
300 and some different companies. We've worked with just over 500,000 Australian workers from mining, construction, waste management.
500,000.
Just to jump in as well, how much money do you reckon you've saved those businesses by working with those individuals? Because what are the statistics? $70 billion a year is probably wasted by
up to $40 billion
$40 billion,
a year is around absenteeism and presenteeism.
There you
combined, around mental ill health. It is, yeah.
Those industries that you mentioned, is mental illness more prevalent in some industries than others?
There's more high risk industries. So where things have changed from obviously being within the workplace back from 2016 to where we are now in 2025, there's work health and safety legislation that come through around psychosocial hazards. So companies now don't have to just manage physical hazards within the workplace. They have to identify, risk assess, and manage and support psychosocial hazards. Things like job demand, work environment, bullying and harassment, discrimination, job control, reward and recognition, all these things within the workplace. And if they don't, there's potential with the high end, real jail time, millions of dollars of fines, and something that's called industrial manslaughter.
Yep.
So this is real within the workplace. And I think the thing around it where it has changed is it was always just, you've got an employee assistance program. We do an Are You OK Day breakfast. We've got a mental health strategy. We're done. What does that do? Because the EAPs, 4 to 9% of the workplace actually use the EAP. So what's the other, 91% of people doing?
And even when you go to them, there's no actionable outcomes that are given to you. Real solutions.
Yeah. So it's not, and it's come so far. And I think even for us, we've had to evolve. Like we were just we did the research, we've partnered with the University of Wollongong, and we've got like we've validated all our courses and our workshops and stuff like that. But that was in our secondary interventions, which is our mental health workplace blueprint when I sort of was with you and Go One and stuff.
Before that, I want to, like, you were just turning up and telling your story. Right?
Yeah.
Now you've trained 500,000 people. How did you put it together? How did you build it? How did you come up with the mental health continuum and the blueprint? How did you get there?
Well, I think one of the best bits of advice I've been given is you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. But if you get the smartest people around you, that's where the magic happens. And that's what I did. I got a lot smarter people than me around me. And I wanted to learn. I connected with subject matter experts. I wanted to learn. I got them involved and everything like that. And we wanted to come from the proactive side of things. The reactive, though, there was still reactive and stuff there because I did a lot of work placement in drug and alcohol rehabilitation centres, mental health hospitals, homeless shelters, where there is the crisis intervention and the reactive side, which 100% we need. Yeah. What was happening in the proactive space where not just treating symptoms, but getting to the root cause. Well, and that was where we entered. As
how did you go from someone, individual person just turning up and telling stories to building a company and a team around it, and then and this methodology that's been validated now by the university?
Yeah, it's sort of hard because I don't really articulate how we did it, but it was from starting those stories, sharing as much as we could. Then it was gathering data and information within and we chose the workplace, so we were doing everywhere and everything, whether it was sporting clubs, communities, kids, adult. You can't be everything for everyone. The mental health space is so big, you can't be everything for everyone. So we figured, where would you be able to hit the most amount of people?
When you say we, did you get some business partners on board early on?
No, not. It was just my wife and I that started it. So we got no investors or anything like that. And that was probably a thing when I started the mental health movement.
What did in play in the?
People said, start a charity, start a not-for-profit. And I was like, spend most of your time fighting for funding. I wanted mental health to be treated the same way as physical health. So I wanted to start a company.
Yep.
Because if you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. So I started a company.
Mental PT.
And I stuck by that, and I got ridiculed and bagged for it and everything like that. And even starting a mental health company, people said, no one's going to want to listen to you. No one's going to want to do anything.
Can't imagine what that feels like.
Yeah. and stuff like that. And I got put down and stuff like that. And I knew something was special here. So I was sharing the story, but then it was partnering with subject matter experts and building out what we wanted to do. So it started off as well, you got to check in with yourself and create self-awareness. So we needed visual tools that people could resonate with. Clinical people, 100% we need them. They're awesome, but we've got to be able to connect with people. So the power story cuts through, connects, and then it's around education, tangible tools to check in with yourself, check in with the people around you. And then it's understanding your role and responsibility as a support network. What are the skills that I need to do? Communication skills, active listening, all those different things. Then what are the support networks? But then for the individual, what is it? Well, I'm not traveling so well, or what do I do to better manage my own mental health or my mental illness? Coping strategies, mindset, support networks, giving them these tools in their resilient kit bag. And then it was obviously, building out that blueprint. So it was awareness, education, training, and resources. That was what the original mental health workplace blueprint was. And we did that for a number of years. But to a degree, we have had it validated, and it does make impacts around behavior change and thought and everything like that. But a lot of it was still treating symptoms. You have to get to the root causes. And that was where the primary intervention come in around psychosocial risk management. So identifying what these hazards are within the workplace, assessing the risk of these hazards to the individual and to the business, looking at what you're currently doing, and then building out a plan to be able to better control and manage those psychosocial hazards.
Just quickly on the workers and that plan, I ran a company that had 40 staff, and most of the problems, not all of the problems, but most of the problems that we had, whether it be in the office, it was a construction company that we had out on site, were people's personal problems that they were brought into the work environment. And that even came down to tough tradies, and they're carrying on like pork chops. There's nothing wrong with what we were providing on site.
Yep.
They just had a blue with their missus in the day before. And so how are you dealing with that? Because you're dealing with the workplace. We're trying to put things in place to reduce stress. But have you found that that is as real in the industries that you're referring to, that people's personal problems are the real issues that are at the workplace?
It's a combination, because we bring our whole selves to work. I remember when I was working at Woolworths and I had a lot of shit going on. I was only 16 or 17 at home, and I remember my boss said to me, because I'd come in not so good states or moods, and he'd say, "Don't bring your problems into work." And I'm thinking, well, I'm here nearly 40 hours a week. Where else am I supposed to take them? And so that was for me. But
I wanted to put a sign up out on the job site when I was a site manager, just going like, leave all your problems out here, and then come in and we'll.
So where it's come to with what legislation says is, like, yes, 100%, there is stuff happening. And the biggest contributing factors in all the data that we do around what's affecting Australian workers in the industries that we work with is it's stress, which is obviously a byproduct, but also a contributor, is financial pressures or finances, it's relationships and kids, and it's work itself. They're usually the top four in the data that we collect that people are struggling with and potentially bringing into work or experiencing.
What do we do for, like, areas and businesses like my area, like health networks, like the NDIS? You've got support workers coming in, there's carers burnout. You're looking after mentally ill people. You're helping a lot of people that are quite vulnerable, and there's a lot consistently being pushed at you. And I've had to manage it quite a bit. Workers kind of sharing. They spend a lot of time with these people. They build connections, and there's a level of familiarity that comes into play there. So, like, how do I, manage those risks? How do I do that from a business perspective?
And for the NFP and charity sector, they're supporting some of the most vulnerable in our communities, and they're one of those high risk sectors or industries. We've actually just written a white paper around it, but it is looking at an effective psychosocial risk management program, because there is those hazards that are specific to your industry, like what you're saying. And it's around identifying what they are, assessing the risk of them, and doing that risk assessment, but looking at what you currently got in place, whether that's your job design, whether that's debriefing, whether that's support networks, whether that's leadership training, whether it's conflict resolution, all these different controls that might be related to those hazards. And then you implement those over time. You have a feedback loop. Is it working? Is it not working? And then you do another risk assessment. So it's kind of an evolution or an evolving element. But I think a lot of workplaces, they hear the word psychosocial hazard and risk assessment and stuff. And
it's a lot of paperwork, man.
Yeah, I don't want to be doing that. That's like, but yes, it is a daunting word if you don't know what it is. But we've done one, we've done it across a lot of industries, but we did one with with mental health movement, because you've got to be practicing what you preach. And we do a lot of traveling, and we are dealing with people's stories and supporting people, critical incidents. So we did that, and it was really refreshing as a company owner, as a CEO, to see some of like, I thought we're doing this and we got this in place, but there was gaps. But until we did the survey and identified what those hazards were, and then did the risk assessment with the team from all levels of the business, not just the leaders doing it. You need everyone there across the snapshot of the business. And then we're able to hear. And then when we found the gaps,
so you literally do a SWOT analysis in the mental health space.
Yeah, the psychology, of your organization. But I think the people think that, well, then you can't do shift work, you can't do this, you can't do that, because it's going to affect everyone. But it's not. It's just about identifying what they are, and then what controls can you put in place or supports to reduce the risk and better manage it.
So what you touched on earlier, just in relation to, you mentioned the word mental fitness, and I'm all about, again, that proactivity side of things, which is how I'm trying to manage my life at the moment. I'd be intrigued to see with yours, but getting that amount of sleep, getting around your mates, having a level of community and connectivity, getting outside, getting a bit of sunlight, making sure that you're getting that sleep, then you're trying to just minimise those things, having a good nutrition. And obviously rugby league players, they come from an area that it's very much about that toughness and then mental toughness. How do you look at it now? Is it building mental toughness, mental resilience, mental fitness, and how are you going about building that in your own personal life?
Yeah, it's definitely like the mental health and the physical health are definitely connected. And when you're putting all those things in place, you're giving yourself the best chance mentally to think and feel good. And when you're playing, you kind of, I think with the pressures on the field, but also the pressures and challenges off the field, you're in your physical peak. So sometimes those mental challenges don't necessarily impact you as much, because you're kind of humming and the stuff from home was there. I knew it was there, but everything else I was sort of humming away with that. But then as soon as I was injured, painkillers, not training, not sleeping, I declined very, very quickly. And then I added the substance use to it. For myself, there's a bit of a mantra I live by. When I do good, when I do bad, I feel bad.
Yeah.
When I do good, I feel good. And for me, I've got self-destructive behaviours.
Well, that's actually something that Phil Jauncey mentioned. That's a way part of your behaviours. I don't know if you remember that.
His thing, I do remember, if it's similar to what you're talking about. And I remember in his eccentric way, he'd say, you can't control your thoughts, you can't control your feelings. I've got 3 degrees and I can't control that. He goes, but you can control your actions. If you want to think or feel differently, you need to go and do something different.
I think even back to your stance, like he mentioned, like if you just take a positive stance, whereas when you're depressed, you're standing there, your head's down, your shoulders drop. So it's, I
think the hardest part with, people that are depressed is it's that first step is so monumentally difficult. Then you talk about, athletes, and yes, they're at their physical peak, or, people that may not be in that shape, that may be, really, really hard on themselves. I've seen it personally with a lot of clients. I see it personally, with my own family, and it's just that loop of I'm already down here. Over here is so far, far, far away.
I think as well with it, where the basic fundamental education is, we need to understand the difference between mental health and mental illness. People think it's the same thing. It's not. It's on a continuum. It's not the same thing. If you have a brain in your head, you have a mental health. It's as simple as that. And it's how you think, act, and feel on a day-to-day basis. It's how you interact with the world. It's how you cope with change, challenge, and adversity, how you maintain meaningful relationships. Everyone has a mental health. And the better we look after and manage our mental health, the better version of ourselves will be, the better we'll be able to cope, et cetera, et cetera. Mental illness is a little bit different. It isn't on a continuum, but a mental illness is an impairment in the way you think, act, and feel on a day-to-day basis. But we all have impairments day-to-day, week-to-week. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a mental illness. It's when that impairment is starting to impact your thoughts, your feelings, your behaviors, your relationships, everything that you're doing, to the point where you're not thinking, acting, feeling the way you normally were. But a mental illness has to be diagnosed by either a mental health GP, a psychologist, a clinical psychologist, or a psychiatrist. You can't self-diagnose or be diagnosed on a phone or by a father and things like that. And I think that's where there's a bit of conjecture or a bit of misunderstanding, where you maybe have gone through struggles at work, stressed, some relationship struggles. Like, do you have clinical depression, or is it more of an environmental challenge and things that are going on, where someone that may be diagnosed with type 2 bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, that is a different kettle of fish, and it needs to be treated and supported and things to what it needs.
How do we fix this problem, right? Like, it's a systemic issue, and it's been around for a long time. Lots of people have come up. Yeah.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
He's trained 500,000 people. If he can't answer that question, we're in trouble. The reason why I ask is, we've got all of these support networks, from Lifeline to Beyond Blue to the Black Dog Institute. However, it's getting worse. We can't blame everything on social media. We can't blame everything on the new generation of...
No.
Well, nine people die a day.
Take their own life, and 7 are men. 76% of all suicides.
And domestic violence is becoming worse. It's not getting any better. We're not finding solutions.
Just on that statistic, if I can jump in. So I've got a friend of mine. He has lost 4 mates to suicide. Each of those 4 blokes were all married with kids, which comes back to that point I said earlier, just in relation to that support. And I think that that's something that there's so much awareness out there, but I don't know if there's enough awareness to place around that the importance that the role of a partner has and the role of an immediate network. Like you pointed out, you got asked by a number of people, are you okay? And your natural reaction was, yeah, I'm fine. And most people go, yeah, well, I've asked him, I've checked in, he's fine. Wayne sat there and he said, mate, like, I know you're not okay. And what is it?
This is why I'm asking. There's enough awareness. Every one of us knows someone who's either taken their life or, has suffered with mental illness.
With suicide.
How many of us have been in depression in this room?
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? Where debilitating, where I couldn't get out of bed at some point in my life, right?
Yep.
And still, we're struggling with this. It's getting worse. It's not getting any better.
Well, social media.
Systems are not there. We talked about, I think, when we first started talking, I'm proud to have played a small part in your whole journey. And what you guys were building was better than anything else we were looking at. I had the support of some amazing people, Dr. Vu Tran, one of the founders of Go One. We practically wrote a blank check to how do we help you bring your blueprint to life? Because we knew that,
which people are still consuming.
And you couldn't scale it one-to-one in person.
Without
so
the
we needed to find a way to help you to sort of scale. But we found your methodology be better than a lot of the ones that were out there. Still, there's simple things we talked about. How do we create that passport of continuum? Like, how do we,
Yeah. I think that it's a two-way street. So it's the individual that needs to have that self-awareness, understand how they're traveling, checking in with themselves, where they're at, what's affecting them, how have they changed, what are you currently putting in place, do you need to make some changes, do you need support? But then there's also the other side of things of people being the support network, that managing themselves really well, but don't necessarily, they've never been taught the skills or the training or the education on how to start a conversation, how to build rapport, how to use active listening and summarizing and paraphrasing and to use consistency and to follow back up and to be empathetic. They haven't been shown those skills. So they sometimes don't engage in those conversations because they're like, shit, am I going to say something wrong? Am I going to make it
If I can jump in here as well, I think it comes down to like technology is the only way to solve it.
And that's where we got all of this technology.
It has to be.
At some point, the problems start early. You said you had a bad upbringing and domestic violence issues. If the opportunity was there, you would have reached out and spoken to someone. I have dealt personally in my life with my daughter as well. Like, she was going through it. You would reach out and call Lifeline, and you would call Beyond Blue. You would call as many services as you can, but there's no connectivity between any of these services. We have technology. We have so many improvements in technology, but the numbers are astounding, but we are not finding a solution to this.
I think Ryan's company, you're being quite proactive. If you want to tell our listeners a little bit about what you're...
Well, I think that, this is an issue that I came and again, Don, when I approached you, and Magnus, when I approached you, my biggest concern with my brother is, him, becoming another statistic. That for me is my biggest fear. And, looking at the NDIS and how many people are at risk and how many people every single day are going through these battles. And we just lack a fundamental understanding of how each individual reacts. The one thing that I've learned is you can throw 400, 500 pieces of education information, but it's that one thing that resonates with you. That one penny drop you talk about before and after NRL. Where does that penny drop occur for each person? How do we define that? How do we find that? Now, with AI, we have processing skills and capabilities that we've never even dreamed of having. Not even close. So with what we do at You Are Supported with the AI and the human sentiment, I talk about the tone of your voice. I talk about earlier with Wayne Bennett. He just knew. And that was one of the things for you.
Experience and all the interactions over the 20, 30, 40 years of coaching.
So you're saying if you can capture that and train a large language model to do the same thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but you can get him proactively rather than
exactly.
So it can be picked up earlier.
And that's what we're aiming to do at You Are Supported. We're aiming to be that proactive approach when, you talk about, imagine having 400 conversations, 500 conversations, with another person, a real person. But then you have that AI reading your sentiment, helping me understand, helping Don understand, helping the educators such as yourself, the mental health movement, and giving these statistics, giving this information to the relevant parties. I think that's where we have the game change, because that's when we have every person as an individual, that passport, that continuity of care. That's where we have the understanding. So for me, when it comes down to how do we solve this problem, I think we already have the tools available. Now it's just about connecting the tools in the right places.
Can I ask, Dan, when you had that penny drop moment with the Black Dog Institute, when they came and presented it, from that moment to getting the support, how long did that take?
It would have been, probably a 6-month period.
Yeah, wow.
That's what I mean. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. That's a long period of time.
So
how do we
a lot of
shorten-
suffering.
But even like you, how do you,
suffering in science the whole life. Yeah.
Again, I've been fortunate enough to go to one of your training sessions, and I've spoke to a few people after you've done it, and you could see the penny drop. Like when you're talking, you could see the penny drop, like in people's faces.
Well, and I think, it's as well. It's not there's no finish line to it. I think that's what we need to understand is that we all have a mental health, and the things that happen on a day-to-day basis are going to impact our mental health. And if we don't look after our mental health, we can decline down that continuum. And some people can experience mental illness, and mental illness does not discriminate. It can affect anyone at any time. It doesn't matter how many teaspoons of concrete you've had and hardened up. It can affect anyone at any time. And currently what the stats say is 1 in 5 will experience a mental illness in any 12-month period. And almost half the Australian population in a lifetime. So it's having that understanding around that. But we do need to take some accountability of our own mental health and putting things in place that are going to help us better manage ourselves, in particular when we're going through challenging times. But if we manage ourselves really well, we've got good levels of mental fitness, well, we need to be of service to our community, to our family, friends, loved ones, and be the support network, not the judgment and the, you should be right, or things like that. I think that's where it's got to be that two-way street.
In your opinion, how do we fix it? I know. I'm coming back to it again. We just had a bit of commentary. I'm coming back to you.
All I can talk on behalf of is what we do in the workplace in this model where there's 3 interventions. So there's the proactive, the primary intervention, the secondary, and the tertiary, where it's not just one thing, it's everything, and it's along that continuum. So it's in layman's terms, it's identifying in the workplace what the problems are, assessing them, and then looking at what you're currently doing. Look at the plan of what we need to do to better manage those psychosocial hazards in the workplace. We put that in that program, and that could be 2, 4, 5 years. It's ongoing. But then you got the secondary interventions where it is around educating the workforce and creating that self-awareness and giving them the skills and the mental fitness and the resilience and the support networks and stuff like that. But that takes time. And an Are You OK Day or a training day talk once a year, that's not enough. It's got to be consistency. And a client that we've done, like we do talks nearly every quarter with their whole workforce, and it builds that trust, it builds that connection. And it's like, then people sort of get their hands on the steering wheel and they can DIY it. I call it the Bunnings it, and they're managing themselves and they're doing really well. But if they get to the point where they're not, then they've got the tertiary, which is then the support networks.
So just elaborate a little bit more for me. So just you personally, what are some of the things that we should all be doing to be better equipped to be dealing with this stuff? So taking that personally
or as being a support network?
Personal. So what do you do personally to maintain as higher of a mental fitness as you possibly can? Like you pointed out, I agree. I think that the stronger you are and the fitter you are, the more that you can endure. So if you're in that position, like as an athlete, we've seen it happen before. If they get sick, they can be in a better position to get well because their level of fitness before they got sick compared to somebody that's not in that position. So what are those things that you do on a day-to-day basis that gives you some good fitness mentally?
Yeah, look, as you said before, sleep is probably my number one coping strategy. When my sleep goes, I know I've got some stuff going on.
How many hours sleep?
Oh, look, I need to be getting between 7 and 9, 9 hours. When I do shift work with the mines and we're doing night shift and stuff like that, and I'm getting 3-4 hours sleep, I do that 2 nights in a row, 3 nights, I'm rattled.
So how do you manage that? If you have 3 hours, then what's your process?
We're not doing that so often. It's not as consistent.
But your self-awareness now, you've realised, and I'm exactly the same. Like I've become that sleep is a massive thing to me, and I prioritise it.
Massively, and I obviously measure it with the Garmin and everything like that. But
me too.
Sleep is my.
That's an old man thing. I'm like, if I get 4 hours,
you're still 20 something.
You think you're indestructible? Wait till you hit those milestones of 30, 40. Start now.
So I think sleep is the biggest one, but it's self-awareness. So like, I don't wake up in the morning and go, I've got type 2 bipolar disorder. How am I getting through the day? I wake up and go, what do I need to do to be the best version of myself? And a lot of the times I've done dumb shit and made bad decisions where it hasn't made me be the best version of myself, and I've suffered from it.
Is gratitude something that you have to focus on? Yep.
So look, and it's not that you can get this done every single day, but if you can get it done sort of 80-20 or 4 out of the 7 days, for me, it's waking up in the morning. It's ice baths is something that I've really integrated in the last couple of years. Is ice baths. So doing 2 to 3 minutes at about 2 degrees.
Morning or afternoon?
Morning.
Yep.
Morning.
Has to be morning.
Yeah. So morning, and then
Dan's the first one to introduce me to this thing. I have ice showers, not baths. I'm not that crazy.
Well, the water doesn't get that cold in Brisbane.
It's got.
I was going to say in the middle of summer, it's not.
It's still cold.
Ice baths is a big one. For me, I write in the notes in my phone. I've got my intentions for the day. So I have 3 intentions. Whether it's to do what I need to do to be a good dad, whatever it is. So I set 3 intentions and I write 3 things down that I'm grateful for. And that's just a bit of that reset. Yep. I sort of train more in the afternoons. So I'm trying to get a session in either whether it's cardio, weights, boxing, or going for a walk. I try and do that. 4 days a week. Exercise is a big one. Look, I love me food, my tucker. I try to stick by the 80-20, but sometimes it might be 60-40, but trying to eat as well as I can, drinking plenty of water, sleep.
Just touch on that water bit, because that's another big one that I've found from a hydration perspective. That's the first thing I do when I get up in the morning is a glass of water.
Before coffee, before anything. 100%. Hydration now. is a big one. The other one is around connection. So for me, it's my wife, where she's someone that I can be open and vulnerable with. But I ask her, I literally say, how have I been traveling the last couple of weeks? And she'll tell me bluntly, she's like, you've been doing really well. Or she's like, you've been a fucking nightmare. And I'm like, all right, well, and it's a bit of a reset. So having that where it's not just in here, it's having that someone that I can trust. That's a big one. The other one is seeing my clinical psych. That once a month, that checkup from the neck up is a big one, even when things are going good, because it's still just good to get it out. No one knows. No one it doesn't get thrown back in your face, and you can just talk about whatever you want. So that's a big one. And then, look, my kids, that's a big one for me now. I've got 3 kids, but I've got a 13-month-old girl, little girl, Nevy. And, my kids, Boston and Tyler as well, they're probably what helps me try and be that better version of myself. But the other one for me is I battle still to this day around, I call it head noise, but overthinking. And I still battle with that for me, and that can be real destructive for me. I'm under no false illusion. I can fall off the perch of the wagon real quick and get into some really bad places and self-destruct like that. And I battle that every single day. But I try, and one of the mantras is don't believe everything you think. They're just thoughts. But being able to talk to someone else really does help.
Does that have a big impact? That has an impact for me on sleep. I'm in bed for that period of time, but whether I'm getting that quality sleep or not is literally impacted on that.
Or when you wake up and you just it starts.
I don't drink. And that's a big thing as well, because when I was drinking, that was great. I'd get to sleep and then wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning with the booze blues and not being able to, and that's when the thoughts were just out of control.
Doom scrolling for me. When I see people's highlights reels and I'm just going,
so that comparison.
And you just look at it and you just go highlight and you're like,
see, alcohol and obviously substances is a big one. Social media is huge.
There's so many barriers, right? Like that.
But
you've talked about social media, alcohol.
I think it was really good, though, what you're touching on is those fundamentals that every single one of us, most of us, have control over those. And I think that coming back to your point, taking that ownership of it, not everybody's able to do it. There are people that have got clinical issues, but
I like how he pointed to me then. Not everyone's able to do it.
Well, it's more so referring to you've spoken about your brother. I was referring to.
So. Also him. He's talking about doom scrolling and doesn't sleep. Sleeping 3 hours a day. He can help.
He can sleep 3 hours a day because he's still 20.
Yeah, just sheer will.
Sorry, go on.
I'm just going to go back to the question again, right? Let me rephrase that.
How do we solve the problem?
No. I'm going to rephrase it because if you had access to any technology on the planet, right, any solution that you could put on the table, right, it could be as science fiction as it can. How do you fix the problem? Right. For me, I heard, I'm not sure if you guys have heard of Dr. Daniel Almond. Some amazing points of view on mental health. Some of them are very fringy, but he talks about, getting a brain scan done because you wouldn't treat a broken arm without getting a proper diagnosis. And when we were able to get that proper diagnosis and getting that scan done, it changed the way how we treated those injuries. Mental illness is still treated by observation.
Yeah, in a lot of areas.
For me, that's what I said. If you I'm just using that as an example.
But it's like there's a solution or things that are needed for mental illness, but then there's what's the solution and things that are needed for just mental health and mental fitness. And that's what I'm saying. It can't be everything for everyone.
But they're the two sides of the same coin, right? So if you can manage mental health, mental illness, it becomes preventative. So if you had everything, like you have to manage mental health to be able to prevent mental but it's illness.
Also and I don't want to, because I'm not an expert in this, but you look at people, and I grew up in lower socioeconomic, but you look at Maslow's hierarchy. They're not worried about self-actualization and self-awareness and checking in. They're just worried about getting their next meal. So to worry about mental health and they don't give a shit about that. They're just worried about getting their next meal. Where are they sleeping tonight and staying out of trouble and staying alive? So that's you know what I mean? Like
perspective.
And it's like Dr. Jordan Peterson talks about raising the baseline level of income, and that's going to put people up the Maslow's hierarchy. Why are people going to pick up rubbish on there that's that when they're just worrying about their next meal? Do you know what I mean? So it's really hard where you look at there's different demographics, there's different levels of financial status, there's different levels of education where you can't put everyone in the same thing and expect them to check in on themselves on the continuum, understand coping strategies, support networks, access to that. It's a very, 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 very hard question to answer.
If you had to pick one, I want to know.
The reason why I ask is like you call yourself not an expert, but you probably have spoken to more people than the average people trying to find a solution in this.
So look, I can give you two things. I've sort of said it already. What does a mentally healthy or a psychologically safe workplace look like? And that's exactly what it is. Identifying what those psychosocial hazards are, risk assessing them, looking at what you're currently doing and building out a plan of proposed controls that's going to better manage them. It's then educating, providing awareness, education, training and resources to your employees, in particular your leaders, giving them the skills and the knowledge of how to better support mental health within the workplace. But you've got to do that consistently. Then it's having the right support networks available if and when people need it, whether it's reactive or proactive. You also need to have the capabilities or the organizational infrastructures to support critical incidents, crisis within the workplace as well. And that's and we see that, and we've researched it with the University of Wollongong. We're presenting at the HSEC New South Wales Mining Conference around it. But the thing is, out of the 300 workplaces that we've worked with, we've probably only had 10 workplaces that have actually done that.
So hypothetically, if technology could implement all of those things, that would be your kind of ideal technology to actually, treat mental health.
Well, having subject matter experts in each field, for example, and it's not competition, it's collaboration. Like Flourished DX, they use technology, check them out. They do a fantastic job around psychosocial risk management. New Psych around that clinical support, or cyber clinic using sort of AI and telehealth and things like that. But then you've got your education and your training organization. So it's the collaborative approach with that. With individuals, I really feel like I can manage a mental illness with the things that we educate and we talk about. But it is having that level of self-awareness and checking in with yourself that you do have a mental health, but use the continuum. Use a scale 1 to 10. Where am I at on that scale? 1 being the worst you've ever felt, 10 being the best you've ever felt. And then that can give you an understanding of where you're at. Then look at, what's affecting me? If I'm at 2, what are the things that are sliding me down that continuum? So you understand those contributing factors, changes, challenges, and adversities. So if financial pressures is your biggest challenge, going to see a psychiatrist is not going to be your best support. You need to go and see a financial planner or an accountant. So if we identify what the challenges are, it can help us then navigate and work through them. But then it's understanding that. Then it's, how do we change? Like when you are at 2 on the continuum, not at 8, what do you notice in yourself that changes? You're probably snappy, you're withdrawn, you're not sleeping, you're drinking more than you usually would. So we need to use them as like alarm bells. Something's not quite right. Because when there's a change, we need to have a check-in.
I think these are all awesome points, but it's like simplifying it.
Even more.
Yeah, I think, you take a lot of the low socioeconomic demographics, you're not this education isn't available, or they don't know about it. It's not in their social circles. Like we talk to each other. This is something that comes up with all of my mates at least once, twice, 3 times a day. but then you go to a different demographic and this conversation is never even had, or it's like trying to get access to these markets. So like, what's your solution for that, apart from obviously educating as many people as possible? But
yeah, and look, our model, it's in terms of scalability, like we've got a great, fantastic team and we do so much great stuff. But I think why we are successful in what we're doing is because we have the human connection and we're there on the front lines face to face. We're underground in coal mines with them in their crib rooms. Like we're doing, and it's resource heavy. And it's
that 500,000 number, was that face to face?
Face to face.
Wow.
And that's
Crazy.
it's hard. And I've been doing it for 10 years and you can tell I've got my head shows how hard it is. Where I think that's what we do really well. But we've got a team of 15 and we've been able to achieve that. But yeah, I'm all for other solutions or using technology and being able to reach more people. But I really feel with a lot of this stuff, it's the human connection, it's the building the rapport, the trust, and things like that. And then having the infrastructures around that. That's where the magic happens.
I met you like 5 years ago. Was that 5 years?
Yeah.
And we were trying to look at a partner. We had this mental health blueprint that we built ourselves. When I say we, I was at Go On. We had a social impact division at that time, and we were working with one of the largest mental health solution providers in Australia. I won't name who it is. They actually said to me, if you really want to make a difference, there's only one person that you should talk to, and gave me your number.
Really? Did you tell me that?
Yeah. Cam and I were at the airport, called you, said, mate, got your number.
And then it was pretty much exactly what you were looking at building.
So we were looking at building this blueprint, and he told us exactly what he's doing and said, that's exactly what we want to do. And your passion hasn't changed. You've been fighting the battle since then. Like it's still the same battle.
I appreciate that, Dom.
Nothing's changed except for the fact that you've trained 500,000 people instead of 6,000.
Yeah.
And
it's been
so massive. That's an incredible effort, mate. Well done.
No, thank you. And it's not just me; it's our team. Like we've got some fantastic team members, and that's the thing. I've never wanted mental health movement. It's not about me; it's about our team, and it's about the work that we do and the people that we get to connect with and support.
Chris still with you? Chris,
he moved on last year. Yeah,
but you had all those people right through the journey. They were all passionate. They all wanted to solve the same problem.
Yeah.
I was going to sidestep slightly and put my M26 hat on. So I'd speak about spirit, mind, and body in that order, and I think that I'm very spirit-led and instinctive. What are your thoughts on spirituality and that being instinctively led?
Yeah, it's interesting that. Like I got brought up Catholic. I went to a Catholic primary school, Christian Brothers High School. So yeah, I definitely believe in something. There's something out there greater than ourselves.
Yep.
I definitely believe in that. I believe that what you put out there, you get back. You treat people, you treat yourself well, you treat the people around you well, you get good energy. I really do believe in that, and the way you think and your actions and your behaviors it puts off energy into the universe. If you want to talk about it. In terms of trust, I do trust my gut. That's probably one thing I didn't do a lot of. I got caught up in the moment, or I was a chameleon, or I was a people pleaser, or all those different things. Where now, I'll probably take a little bit more time, where you step back a little bit, press pause. I'll ask my missus, people that I trust, and get a bit more, and then press pause and make a decision and trust that gut. If you don't feel quite right and something's there, you need to look at that. And the times in my life I look back when I had that feeling and I didn't listen to it, I'm like, fuck,
we all have that, and that's with your head getting in the way. So big advocate of trusting your gut.
So they're probably those things. Yeah.
Fantastic. Are we ready to jump into the quick fire questions yet, boys?
I love this.
I think that's it.
Hit it.
Ready?
Yeah, I like them.
What's one word you'd use to describe your mental health journey?
Ongoing.
What should we all be doing more of?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
What should we all be doing less of?
Sleep for you.
Yeah. I think we need to be doing less of the things that we know are not good for us.
Yep.
And I'm not judging. I've been guilty of that, where you're not well, but you're not willing to give up the things that have made you not well.
Yep. What advice would you give 18-year-old Dan?
You don't have to do it on your own.
The most valuable lesson
Hard
rugby
work
league taught
trumps
you.
talent.
The biggest myth about mental health that you'd like to smash.
You can live with a mental illness and be mentally healthy.
What's your go-to self-care ritual?
Intentions, gratitude, ice bath, exercise, connection.
The best piece of advice that you ever received?
You don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but get the smartest people around you and the magic happens.
Who's the toughest opponent you ever faced on the footy field?
Oof, that's a tough one. Mate, Petro Sivanasiva was a very tough individual.
And what's the most misunderstood thing about resilience?
That everyone thinks that they've got it.
Coffee or pre-workout?
Coffee and pre-workout.
He's hardcore.
I don't want a stimulant.
Your morning must-have routine?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, trying to get that 7 to 9 hours. But waking up before everyone else is up, which is it's always it's just that quiet time. But yeah, ice bath, intentions, gratitude, trying to get exercise in, and planning your day. Like that's a big one. Understanding what you're about to rip into.
Yep. If you could change one thing about how Australia handles mental health, what would that be?
See, that would have been a better question.
Yeah. I think we thanks, gents. We need to address the elephant in the room. We need to stop tiptoeing around it. We need to have the tough conversations, and we need to identify what the real root causes are. Because when we do that, then we can,
treat the cause, not the symptom. A quote or mantra you live by?
Yeah, I think it's when I do bad, I feel bad. When I do good, I feel good.
Well said. Who inspires you right now?
To be honest, it's my wife and kids. I know that's cliche, but for me, I've been very selfish throughout my whole life, where it was all about me and it was me, and the victim and whatever it was. Where I think I'm sort of come out of that, where it's not about me anymore. It's about me trying to be the best I can be for them.
The most valuable advice that you could leave with our listeners?
Yeah, I think just know you are important. Your struggles do matter. The toughest thing you've ever been through is the toughest thing you've ever been through. There is always someone worse off, but that doesn't mean you should dismiss what you're going through and where you're at. Acknowledging where you're at, know that it will pass. You may not see any light at the end of the tunnel at the moment, but it will pass. Some of the headspaces I've been in, I never thought I'd see that light, but there is always that light. And if you can't see it, get someone else to help you see that light, or with you until you see that light. Know that you're not alone. And yeah, I think that's.
All right, my final question. Define mastery in one word.
Well, I'm going to go 2 words: failure and perseverance.
Mate,
you don't learn unless you don't fail.
Mate, awesome conversation. Love your insights. Love the work that you're doing with the mental health movement. Fantastic. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks, gents. I really enjoyed that.
Ryan,
cheers.
Don.
Man, I was hoping to get some insights into how to invest into a company to make $1 billion, but all good. Cheers, man. It seems like an impossible problem to solve right now.
It might be one we can try and come up with ourselves.
I think we've got pretty close to it with this one. I'm on the board for this one, so yeah.
Let's jump in.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed this exciting episode of the Mastering Podcast. If you got value from today's conversation, hit that subscribe button now and share this episode with a friend. Until next time.